What's up everybody? Welcome to Balkan Moto. Today we're starting a new project. We're going to be making some wall art. Let's check it out. Alright, so what I meant by wall art is we're going to be taking the V45 engine out of this parts bike. We're going to clean it up, disassemble it, and then make a wall art piece out of it, and then we're going to mount it up there on the wall along with some schematics. So for this first episode, the obvious job here is to get it out of the frame and onto the tool bench. Okay, so the engine is mounted to the frame on four engine mounts, one being down here. There's an equivalent one on the other side. There is this one right here, which is actually just a shaft that goes through all the way to the other side, and then there's this one here. Now the interesting thing about this parts bike, which is why it's only a parts bike, is that pretty much most of those engine mounts have something wrong with them. So I don't know if you guys can see this, but clearly the engine is not lined up with the mount. The reason for that is that the rubber grommet that's supposed to be in there is actually back here. You can see me spinning it. It's not sitting inside of the engine mount. So that's unfortunate. So that's really not holding anything. On the other side, fortunately that one is holding it. The other messed up thing here is that the reason why I didn't make this bike into a cafe racer, it was because of this engine mount being completely snapped off and the frame being damaged right here. So really what's holding this engine to the frame is the equivalent one on the other side, this one down here and this one down here. So to take it out, what we're going to do is, obviously we're going to loosen up those engine mounts, but as is, the engine will not budge in terms of getting out of the frame. Fortunately, the way Honda has built this frame, we can just disassemble this piece right here. So take out these two bolts and where's the other ones? I believe, yeah, from this point here, so this entire thing comes out, so the engine can actually drop out this way. So that will be the way we're going to do that. And the other piece that's holding it in place is obviously the drive shaft. So for that, we're just going to loosen it up from this side, if I can get to the bolts, and just take it off. So let's get some gloves on and start taking the stuff off. Okay, so I just read through the instructions on how to take the engine out, and most of the stuff is already done since I've already taken off most of the parts. But the two things that we start with is draining the oil, which I believe it still has oil in it, and the other is removing the rear wheel. Now the interesting bit here is that this bike doesn't have a center stand. And I don't have my jack right now, so it'll be interesting to see how we're gonna take off the rear wheel without the bike just dropping on the ground. It might just mean that I'll have to put the bike on its side and then disconnect everything, then flip it over, or do some sort of funny thing. Either way, let's drain the oil first. And then I'll try to solution something for that. To drain the oil on these bikes, it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty much standard on most motorcycles. You have the oil filter here, then right under there's a bolt right around, where is it? Yeah, right there. So this bolt, just undo it. I believe it's a 19 or 17. Undo that, the oil should start flowing, and then we'll unscrew the filter. The engine oil is almost completely drained. The filter is out. Now I've been looking at why we needed to remove the rear wheel, and because the motorcycle is a drive shaft motorcycle, the drive shaft that's currently inside of this tube, or the swing arm, is holding on to that. So what needs to be done is to actually disassemble, take the wheel off, take this entire piece off, pull the shaft out, and then I can take off the rest of the components. However, we'll see when we get to that place. Until then, I can do a few little things to get some of the stuff out of the way, like for example removing the shifter assembly and the right peg to give me access to the bolt over here for the engine mount, as well as I believe everything else is just hanging, so it is not connected. Actually, I could probably remove the clutch cable as well, and the instructions do say to remove the clutch sleeve cylinder, so I might just remove that completely as well. So let's get these little things out of the way in preparation for doing the bigger part while we wait for the oil to drain. The clutch line is gone, sleeve cylinder is out, and the peg is off. Okay, since I don't have my jack, what I've devised as a method of jacking up the back of the bike is this car ramp that I have here with a thick piece of wood on top that I'll essentially put close to the bike. And then I'm just gonna literally deadlift the back of the bike onto it. The bike, because it's missing so much of its components, is actually not that heavy. And the front will carry most of the weight. So let's get that on there. Boom. Okay, worked like a charm. The rear wheel is off. We still have the... Actually, let me put some of these bolts back in so I don't lose them. Just a little bit threaded like that. Okay, so the rear wheel is off. Look, that's greasy. And I need to take out the drive shaft. So that probably means undoing these three bolts. Now I suspect this has gear oil in it. So let's bring the oil bucket back, because this will likely leak out a whole bunch of oil as we open it up. Either way, I think the plan is to remove the drive shaft, reassemble the back wheel on, drop the bike onto the ground, and then remove all the stuff so we can take the engine out, such that we'll have a rolling frame that has no gearing. All right, if you've ever been curious what's in here, jet, there's a spring that like. Okay, and the drive shaft should be this thing here, which is quite difficult to grasp. And there it is. You have your drive shaft. On one end is the gearing for the back, for the final drive, much like a car. And then you have one of these elbow joints or whatever they're called. Okay, so this is coming out, and let's put everything back together so we can drop the bike onto its wheel. Just so we don't lose it, let's put the spring back on here. Like so. And the 3 nuts. Balance. Okay. In terms of what else is left, is the drive shaft or axle. The axle goes through there. With that in there, and out this side. And then we put on the 22mm bolt on this side. Boom. And the only other thing is the rear brake. Might as well mount that on. I need to line that up and put it on. So either way, let's just put that back on. Tighten everything so that we can put the bike back down. All right, rear rail's back on. The brake works. No spillage, everything got contained. Drive shaft there. So we're good to take the bike back off of this stand and continue with taking off the engine mounts. So let's do that. Let's get this boy off of the stand. Lightweight. All right, now that the drive shaft's removed, the engine oil is taken out, the slave cylinder is taken out, all the wiring is off. If you had a fully working bike, you would have to remove the carburetors, remove the gas tank, detach the radiator and drain the radiator fluid. I suspect that we might have some radiator fluid still in here. So maybe I should, I believe the drain bolt is right here. So maybe I should just open that up just to make sure everything drains before loosening things. And we're pretty much in a good position to start disassembling. As expected, there is some green coolant fluid still in there, so let's let that drain and figure out how we're gonna prop things up. Okay, so this is what I came up with. I have my car ramp with 2 thin pieces of plywood and then 2 pieces of 2x4, and right now the entire bike is actually resting on the oil pan of the engine. So theoretically speaking, if we were to detach the engine from the frame, the entire frame should drop down and the wheels should go on the floor. The front wheel is like about my finger height off the floor. The rear wheel a little bit less. So that shouldn't be a crazy big drop, but enough to allow me to then lift up the entire frame off the engine. So without further ado, let's start loosening things. Top engine mount is off. Wow, there's a lot of loose stuff on this bike. We can now loosen up the bottom and let's see if that's gonna make anything move. All right, the rear engine mount bolt is off. It's interestingly threaded in the middle. As I pulled it out, the weight of the engine actually kind of like slumped backwards onto the boards, and the frame was able to kind of like relax, and you can kind of see how much it's slumped. Like this used to line up with this. So let's loosen up that guy and then loosen up these two and this one so we can take off the side. Also, I think we need to disconnect this hose down here, and we should be able to pull the engine out. Alright, the nut on the back of this engine mount bolt is off. I also had to loosen up and take off the bolts that were in here. They were used to hold this bracket, which technically was supposed to attach to the other engine mount, which is broken. So this part of the frame should be free to pull out that way. Now the only thing that remains is taking out these bolts and loosening up this hose. All right, and this is the last bolt, which is actually loose. There we go. And the frame should come off pretty much in one piece. Okay. All right, so that's loose. The engine is obviously supported by just the wood under it. So at this point, I'm just gonna take this guy off so it's out of my way, and I'll have to see what I need to do to essentially lift off the frame from the engine. Okay, the frame is sorted out. We have pretty much a rolling frame here. Now the engine, in order for me to actually be able to work on it comfortably, I need to move it up there. So I tried wiggling it around just to get a gauge of how heavy it is. I can lift it off the floor, but the grip on it, as suspected, is incredibly difficult. There's literally no good spot to actually grab it so that you can lift. So I might need to find a way to get it onto kind of like progressively higher things. Perhaps maybe get onto the stool and then raise the stool and then lift it from there onto the bench. Either way, let's clear out the bench just to make more room for it and get it on there. All right, after shimmying the whole engine over, then getting on top of the two ramps, then on top of the tire with the board, and eventually just squatting it up, the engine is on the tool bench. Now we can finally start disassembling it. Alright guys, the engine is out of the frame. We're ready to start disassembling, cleaning, and figuring out what we're going to do with it in terms of making it an art piece. Make sure to subscribe, hit the little bell for notifications when new videos become available, since the following videos will be digging into this guy, and it'll be pretty interesting to see what's in there and how it works. Also make sure to follow me on Instagram at Balkan Moto 2018 and check out balkanmoto.com. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.